details of the percentage of female students in our college, which indeed is showing that yes, we are moving forward. Thank you once again. Now, we will hear from our dear Teachers Council Secretary of Rampurhat College, Dr. Amlan Jamadar. We would request Dr. Jamadar to kindly share his valuable insight. Sir, the platform is yours.
নমস্কার। আজকে রামপুরহাট কলেজের বিশাখা কমিটি এবং ইন্টারনাল কোয়ালিটি অ্যাসিউরেন্স সেল IQACর যৌথ উদ্যোগে এবং আসন্ন 8ই মার্চ যে ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ওমেন্স ডে সেই উপলক্ষে পিলার ফর শেপিং ওমেন এম্পাওয়ারমেন্ট ফর Viksit Bharat 2047 শীর্ষক যে ওয়ান ডে ইন্টারন্যাশনাল সেমিনার অনলাইন মোডে আয়োজন করা হয়েছে। এখানে আয়োজক এবং উপদেষ্টা মণ্ডলীর সকল সদস্য এবং সদস্যবৃন্দ, কলেজের অধ্যক্ষ ডক্টর প্রবল কুমার সিনহা মহাশয়, পরিচালনা সমিতির সভাপতি ডক্টর আশিস বন্দ্যোপাধ্যায় মহাশয়, IQAC কোঅর্ডিনেটর স্যার এবং উপস্থিত সকল অধ্যাপক অধ্যাপিকাবৃন্দ, সকল শিক্ষার্থী এবং গবেষকবৃন্দ এবং সর্বোপরি আজকে যারা আমন্ত্রিত বক্তা হিসাবে রয়েছেন প্রত্যেকে আমার আন্তরিক শ্রদ্ধা, সম্মান ও ভালোবাসা জানাই। 2047 সালের বিকশিত ভারতের দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি অর্জনে নারীর ক্ষমতায়ন সম্পর্কে সচেতনতা গড়ে তোলার লক্ষ্য নিয়ে মূলত আজকের এই সেমিনারের আয়োজন করা হয়েছে। আমি আবারও আন্তরিকভাবে অভিনন্দন জানাচ্ছি আমাদের IQAC কোঅর্ডিনেটর ডক্টর দেবজ্যোতি সামন্ত মহাশয়কে। আজকের এই সেমিনারে অর্গানাইজিং কমিটির সকল সদস্য এবং সদস্যবৃন্দ, বিশেষ করে আমাদের মহাদি, আমাদের আলপনা ম্যাডাম, আমাদের সুধীন্দ্রদি রয়েছেন, পাশাপাশি বিশাখা কমিটির ইসাদি এবং আমাদের বিশাখা কমিটির আরো 2 জন গুরুত্বপূর্ণ সদস্য, আমাদের চামেলি ম্যাডাম, আমাদের সুদীপাদি, প্রত্যেকেই আমি আন্তরিকভাবে অভিনন্দন জানাচ্ছি। কেননা আজকের দিনে দাঁড়িয়ে ভারতবর্ষের আর্থসামাজিক প্রেক্ষাপটে এরকম একটি সুন্দর বিষয় আমাদের সামনে উপস্থাপিত করেছেন এবং চর্চা করার সুযোগ করে দিয়েছেন। এই সেমিনারের মধ্য দিয়ে শিক্ষা, স্বাস্থ্য, অর্থনৈতিক স্বাধীনতা, ডিজিটাল অন্তর্ভুক্তি এবং আইনি সচেতনতার মতো গুরুত্বপূর্ণ স্তম্ভগুলির উপরই আলোকপাত করা হবে। এগুলি নারীর ক্ষমতায়নের সঙ্গে ভীষণ ভাবেই জড়িত। পাশাপাশি এই সেমিনারে নারীদের আর্থসামাজিক অবস্থা শক্তিশালী করার জন্য পরিকল্পিত সরকারি নীতি, পরিকল্পনা এবং গৃহীত উদ্যোগগুলিও সুন্দরভাবে উপস্থাপিত হবে এই আশা রাখছি। আমি আমার বক্তব্য দীর্ঘায়িত করব না, কেননা আজকের এই সেমিনারে যারা বিশিষ্ট বক্তা হিসাবে আমন্ত্রিত রয়েছেন ডক্টর মীনাক্ষী চক্রবর্তী প্রিন্সিপাল, ডক্টর অমৃতা ব্যানার্জি অ্যাসিস্ট্যান্ট প্রফেসর এবং HOD পলিটিক্যাল সায়েন্স ডিপার্টমেন্ট EC কলেজ আসানসোল, এবং ডক্টর শুভশ্রী জিসাক পোস্ট ডক্টরেট রিসার্চ ফেলো ওকলাহোম মেডিকেল রিসার্চ ফাউন্ডেশন USA। প্রত্যেকেই আমি আন্তরিকভাবে ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি। সামগ্রিকভাবে 2047 সালের মধ্যে একটি সুসংগত, একটি ন্যায়সঙ্গত, একটি পরিকল্পিত এবং একটি ক্ষমতায়িত সমাজ গঠনের লক্ষ্য নিয়ে একটি সম্মিলিত প্রতিশ্রুতি গড়ে তোলার উদ্দেশ্য নিয়ে আজকের এই সেমিনার একটি ইতিবাচক ভূমিকা রাখবে এই আশা রেখে এবং আজকের এই সেমিনারের সর্বাঙ্গীন সাফল্য কামনা করে সকলকে আবার শিক্ষক সংসদের পক্ষ থেকে আন্তরিক ধন্যবাদ, অভিনন্দন জানিয়ে আমার বক্তব্য রাখছি। ধন্যবাদ।
ধন্যবাদ জানাই স্যারকে। নারী উন্নয়নের বিভিন্ন দিক নিয়ে তিনি আলোকপাত করলেন। এখন প্রশ্নটা হচ্ছে, যদি সত্যি নারীর উন্নয়ন হয়ে থাকে তাহলে why a day is needed to celebrate womanhood? Sorry for the interruptions. Right. So what I was talking about, why a day is a particular day is needed to celebrate women's achievement and women's development. But the truth is that চিন্তনের জগতে যে বিপ্লব দরকার হয় তার জন্য কোথাও হয়তো থামা উচিত নয়। দিস ইজ আ কন্টিনিউয়াস প্রসেস, যেখানে যত নারীর সমস্যা, নারীর উন্নতি, নারীবাদ সম্পর্কিত বিভিন্ন তথ্য নিয়ে আমরা যত আলোচনা করব, আমাদের চিন্তনের জগতে হয়তো ততটাই সমৃদ্ধ হবে। So we are now moving to the main segment of today's program. We have three eminent speakers with us. We move to the first invited lecturer of the seminar. It is our pleasure to invite Dr. Meenakshi Chakraborty to deliver her lecture. But before she delivers her lecture, we must know who she is. Dr. Meenakshi Chakraborty had a brilliant academic career. She did her schooling and graduation with English honors from the highly prestigious Loreto Convent and Loreto College of Darjeeling, West Bengal. A natural linguist, topped in MA and MPhil English in the University of North Bengal. She was awarded doctorate degree on Bellow and Existential Humanism in 2005. The Indo-American Center for International Studies, Hyderabad, had awarded her a fellowship to complete her PhD research work. Her doctoral thesis is about to be published by a renowned publication house. Dr. Meenakshi is a seasoned teacher of English. She has been teaching English literature and language at various levels. She began her career as a simple English teacher in a school, but within a year, she joined renowned St. Joseph's College, Darjeeling in 1990. Before joining as the development officer in the University of North Bengal, she was a reader in English. Dr. Chakraborty did her diploma in English language teaching from the Institution of English, Kolkata, and stood first. This present work on English language is the modified version of the dissertation submitted in the Institute of English, Calcutta during her diploma course. The moot point of this endeavor reflects that without language, the literary appreciation cannot be accomplished. Now she is the principal of Kalipada Ghosh Tarai Mahavidyalaya, Bagdogra. She has authored several books and articles, remains resource person in several seminars and conferences. Gender studies is one of her areas of interest, and the title of her talk is Empowering Women, Challenges and Possibilities. Madam, we welcome you and look forward to your enlightening presentation. We welcome you to our college. The stage is yours.
Very good afternoon, Namaskar, and I hope I am heard because I'm speaking from the district of Darjeeling, as my introducer very nicely introduced me. Ebong ami Darjeeling district theke kotha bolchi, and thanks to the technology je ajke ami apnader shobar sathe somobeto hote perechi regarding a very important issue. And as I heard the previous speakers. They have given us a very good introduction regarding the topic that we will discuss today. Ami shuru korar age, I would like to give my respects and regards to the principal from whom Dr. Probal Kumar Sinha, and he happens not to be here today while we are talking, but he had sent me the invitation letter, and I got the invitation from the organizing secretary and of course the conveners, and a special thanks to Biti because she personally spoke to me being from Bagdogra and being from our college. So thank you very much. Ajker topic hocche pillars for shaping women empowerment for Viksit Bharat at 2047. Someone just before this had very nicely introduced je keno amra abar International Women's Day celebrate korchi. Is it really required in 2026 after years and years? There was fights, there was revolutions, and everyone wanted to have the basic minimum rights. But that way, I feel, our Indian Constitution gave us enough. From day one, we were given, with the Constitution, the right to vote. এইখানে আমার একটা জিনিস মনে হয় বলা দরকার যে যদিও all efforts have been taken to improve the status of women, the constitutional dream, যে ড্রিমটা সবাই দেখেছিলেন with Ambedkar sir, যে there will be gender equality, is miles and miles away. Ekhono, it is not the mainstream. The women are not in the mainstream. It is still the male stream, MALE. So we are discussing about women. Though the backdrop today, Prithibi Bhishon Uttal, and there is the fight going on, and whether we like it or not, we all will be drawn in this war. We really don't know. The future is bleak. And here I feel, I wish women were more there at the top, somewhere, taking very important policy decisions. Tale ki juddhota ado hoto. Abar third world war dike egotam. That is a food for thought. Maybe later on we can discuss. এখানে আমার মনে হয়েছে যে একটা ভীষণ paradoxical issue, because some women are doing so well, as one of the introducers had very nicely said, what we have achieved. We have the Indian cricket team, the women's cricket team, getting the Booker prizes, reaching the moon, doing everything. But at the corner, we see the women who still don't see anything. So this reminds me of a very important novel I'm sure many of you have read in your school and college days, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. ওনার ওই প্রথম লাইনগুলো যখন আমরা পড়ি তখন আমাদের উইমেনদের অবস্থা মনে হয়, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness, it was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity, it was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, it was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. Actually, everything, one layer of people, one group of women, one group of urban women, one group of economically, how would I say, the women who are doing well for themselves, but we still don't have the equality. We still don't have the basic education, the pillars. We don't have till date. Do you see in the leadership also, even in the leadership, even in our academic institutions, though we have more women teachers, go to the universities, how many finance officers are there? How many lady finance officers are there? I really have to count on my fingers. Nowadays, at least, we are seeing vice chancellors of women in West Bengal and, of course, in other states also. কিন্তু policy decisions যেখানে নেওয়া হচ্ছে সেখানে কতখানি আমরা নারীকে দেখতে পাই, where she will take decision for the other ladies. And of course, for everyone, I always feel that till date, we have to say women and man. কারণটা কি? We are all human beings. যেটা আমরা সবাই জানি, অর্ধেক আকাশ, 50% should be the decisions of women. But I feel it all starts in the family. Family. You know what? Family is a very closed unit. And in that closed unit, we don't see that people will interfere much. But over there also, urban educated women, they also have to do certain things which maybe they profess outside in a different. আমার যেটা মনে হয় যে আমি আমার প্রিয় ছাত্রছাত্রীদেরকে বলছি, কেন প্রত্যেকটা কলেজে এখন দেখা যাচ্ছে যে গার্ল স্টুডেন্টস আর মোর। আমরা মেয়েদেরকে বেশি দেখছি আমাদের কলেজেও, বাগডোগরা কলেজে 60% স্টুডেন্টস আর গার্ল স্টুডেন্টস। রামপুরহাট কলেজে আমি একটু আগে শুনলাম যে ওদেরও more than 50% স্টুডেন্টস আর গার্ল স্টুডেন্টস। তাহলে তো সমাজটা সুন্দর হওয়া উচিত, আরো অনেক অনেক সুন্দর হওয়া উচিত। তাহলে why are we having so many of crimes against women? Why? আমাদের এত ক্রাইম কেন হচ্ছে? Because it's no surprise when the National Crime Record Bureau states that crime against women are on the rise. Was it ever not on the rise? However, it is important to mention that we only get a partial reflection of the extent of crimes. যতটা ক্রাইম হচ্ছে তারটা কি প্রত্যেকটা কি রেকর্ডেড হয়? আমরা কি পরিবারের মধ্যে যে ভায়োলেন্স গুলো হয় সেগুলো কি দেখতে পাই? এবং that's a closed door because the family is a closed unit. We don't see that. Of course, the saddest part is the feticide. এখনো ভ্রূণ হত্যা হচ্ছে, কারণ because everyone wants a male child. এটা সবচেয়ে বেশি দুঃখের যে একজন মহিলা, I know of a very incident, আমার একজন ডাক্তার বান্ধবী, she is not from our state, she is not a Bengali, but she had to, because of the pressure of the family, she had to get her fetus destroyed. Being a doctor, can you believe? The societal pressure is so much. তাই জন্য আমরা কোথায় বলছি যে we have advanced. We have advanced, yes. As the numbers say, many women are thinking in a very progressive manner. But where is the support system? Some families, very few families, we can still count on them. Very, very few families where they are getting the support. But in most you will see, যেখানে দরজার বাইরে অন্যরকম আলোচনা এবং পোডিয়ামে গিয়ে অন্যরকম আলোচনা, কিন্তু বাড়ির ভেতরে the politics that is different. Because it all starts at home. এই যে আমরা বলি নারী ক্ষমতায়ন, নারী ক্ষমতায়নটা তো প্রতিটা পদক্ষেপে হবে। কেন আমরা আলাদা করে এডুকেশন আমরা চেষ্টা করা হচ্ছে, প্রত্যেকটা গভর্নমেন্ট ট্রাই করছে যাতে পড়াশোনা শিখুক, কিন্তু সেই পড়াশোনাটা শিখে আমরা কি ডোমেস্টিক ভায়োলেন্স বন্ধ করতে পেরেছি? আমরা কি রেপ বন্ধ করতে পেরেছি? আমরা কি সেক্সুয়াল হ্যারাসমেন্ট বন্ধ করতে পেরেছি? আমরা কি গার্ল ট্রাফিকিং বন্ধ করতে পেরেছি? আমরা কি ডাউরি রিলেটেড প্রবলেমস, এই সিচুয়েশনে আমরা কি একটাও এই সব ভায়োলেন্স এগুলো তো বাড়ছে, eve teasing, think of something like that. Why did we have to have the Vishakha committee? Why do we have to have the the sexual redressal cell? আমাদের এগুলো তো সব করতে হয়েছে কলেজে, কারণ কি এই শিক্ষা প্রতিষ্ঠানে থেকেও আমাদেরকে কিন্তু এই সব জিনিস নিয়ে আলোচনা করতে হচ্ছে। আমাদের ছেলেরাও ছাত্ররাও এই একই জিনিস পড়ছে এবং শিখছে এবং সমাজকে দেখছে এবং আমাদের ছাত্রীরাও দেখছে, কিন্তু are we really educated? So here comes in, আমরা যদি একটু ভাবি, like someone also mentioned this, that যদি আমরা ইন্ডিয়ান সোসাইটিকে তিনটে টাইমস, মানে কি আমরা যদি বলি এনশিয়েন্ট ইন্ডিয়া, দেন দ্য মিডিভিয়াল ইন্ডিয়া যেরকম আমাদের, এবং আধুনিক, আমি পোস্ট আধুনিক, পোস্ট মডার্ন, আই এম নট গোয়িং ইনটু অল দ্য ডিটেলস। আমি শুধু বলছি আমরা যখন দেখছি যে এনশিয়েন্ট ইন্ডিয়া পেইন্টেড আ কাইন্ড অফ পিকচার where the position of women and how do you say, the Indian women in ancient India enjoyed to some extent the equal status with man, and it is reflected in our Vedas, our Upanishads, our Ramayana, our Mahabharat, এবং মহিলাকে বলা হতো অর্ধাঙ্গিনী, আর এটাও বলা হতো that she is half of her husband, and an unmarried man was considered to be incomplete. And all religious ceremonies were performed by the husband along with the wife. This shows the importance that was given to the women in ancient period. Our history teachers, our sociology teachers, and everyone would let you know this very well. But then came the Dark Ages, the medieval period, and the status of women went down considerably. She was considered to be inferior to man. Someone very rightly said that she was the second sex when someone was introducing the topic. So inferior. Any historians have, when they termed it at the Dark Age, and তখন কিন্তু আমাদের সমাজে দেখা গেল যে we had the parda system, and then we had sati, there was child marriage, and so on and so forth. And later on, we see the modern period, and here women are trying to be economically independent. Now, we should not judge by the handful of women who are economically independent. She seeks employment and she tries to make some kind of change. এইখানে আমার মনে হয়েছে যে যারা, those who could break the glass ceiling, they have to make a pool. They have to take the initiative, the privileged women, the economically independent women, the educated women, to bring in everyone. And here again, the women themselves, they have to realize, এটা অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ, মহিলাদেরকে নিজেদেরকে পাল্টাতে হবে। কেন Indian women, especially when you go to the status of women, women internalize and uphold patriarchal norms. এটা কোনো দোষ বলবো না আমি, এটা না over the years, বছরের পর বছর এটা হয়ে আসছে। এটা কি হয়েছে, there's a growing recognition of these cycles, এই যে social pressure with younger, এখন কিন্তু মহিলারা জিজ্ঞেস করছে, why should I have to do this? Why? And now they are asking cooperation, not competition. Women is not fighting for competition. We don't have to prove that we are someone very great. কিন্তু এইটাই হয়েছে সবচেয়ে বড় প্রবলেম। কেন আমাদের মধ্যে ইনস্টিল করা হয়েছে something called the good girl syndrome. The good girl, ভালো মেয়ে হতে হবে। Now ভালোটা কি? ভালো is a very, very relative term. You know what? ভালো, according to the so-called norms, is to be obedient. You have to be very obedient. You have to be self-sacrificing, always agreeable. যেটা বলছে হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ এটাই ঠিক আছে, হ্যাঁ। Conditioned to seek approval. আমাদেরকে বলা হয়েছে at the cost of our own desires. In India, ভারতবর্ষে, this translates the dutiful daughter. কি হতে হবে? ডিউটিফুল ডটার হতে হবে। সে যদি একটু বেশি মুখরা হয়, সে যদি ভালো কি মন্দ কি একটু বেশি বলে, তাহলে বলবে ও দুপাতা ইংরেজি পড়ে ফেলেছো, কিংবা একটু লেখাপড়া করতে গেছো, আর স্কুল কলেজ দেখেছো, তাই জন্য তোমরা এখন আর কিছু মানছো না। কেন? ওদেরকে অ্যাকমোডেটিং হতে হবে। আমি আর একটা কথা বলি, যখন আমরা চাকরি করতেও যাই তখন কিন্তু বলা হয় যে টেক আ জব which is safe. শিক্ষিকার চাকরি নয়, রিপোর্টার। বউ দেখতে মানে মেয়ে দেখতে গেছে, বলবে রিপোর্টার, মেয়ে রিপোর্টার, রাত বিরতে বেরোবে, কি দরকার? দরকার নেই তো রিপোর্টারের সঙ্গে বিয়ে দেওয়ার। So if it is an arranged marriage, so you know what, even the occupation, they like the money that the girl is going to get, but the profession, so that she has to compromise and she will have to look after. We are not saying looking after your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, and all your relations is bad. No. Kintu, or compromise is always the word. Accommodating. It is always putting family and societal expectations above personal needs. এই একটা প্রচলিত কথা আছে না, যখন এটা ভীষণভাবে শুনি আমরা, যখন একটি ছেলের বিয়ে হয় না, তারা বলে ছেলেটি বিয়ে করেনি। কিন্তু যদি একটি মেয়ে, she doesn't want to get married, তখন বলে মেয়েটির ছেলেটি বিয়ে করেনি আর মেয়েটি বিয়ে হয়নি। So this is the term. It's so derogatory. It is so very derogatory. So conflict, মহিলাদেরকে বলা হয়েছে you have to be the good girl, you have to be the goddess incarnate, avoid conflicts, and guilt. এই কথাটা আমার মনে হয়েছে, guilt is weaponized. মানে তুমি এরকম করে কাজ করে বেড়াচ্ছ, তুমি এটা করছো, তুমি রাত বিরতে ফিরছো, তোমার কাজটাকে তুমি বেশি প্রায়োরিটি দিচ্ছ, কিংবা এই জিনিসটাকে তুমি you have doing too much of extension work. So the guilt is weaponized, and this is kept. It's a part of the patriarchy. আর এই কন্ডিশনিংটা না আমাদের উপরে, মহিলাদের উপরে, বাচ্চাদের উপরে, ইভেন এখনকার বাচ্চাদের উপরে, do they ask questions now? They are ensuring that patriarchyটা শুধু থাকে না, শুধু সার্ভাইভ করে না, সেটা যেন থ্রাইভ করে। এইটাই হয়ে গেছে মূল প্রবলেম এখন। তাই জন্য আমার মনে হয়েছে লেজিসলেশন কিন্তু এটাতে কিচ্ছু করতে পারে। We've been having the role of legislation. I am impressed because today we'll be hearing about legislation from one of the speakers. So we have the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act of 1856, the Child Marriage Restraint Act of 1929, the Hindu Women's Right to Property Act of 1937, the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. I'm not going into details, but these are all to protect women. But do you think the Suppression of Immoral Traffic in Women and Girls Act of 1956-57, the Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961. So over the years, the government has given and taken the initiative of making laws so that women are at par, women can have a voice But let me tell you, has it reached to my very remote interior of the tea gardens, which are very close to our college? We have first generation learners here. We have plenty of girls coming in. They learn. But sometimes when I question, why didn't you come to college? Then they say, ma'am, আসতে পারিনি কারণ ভাইকে স্কুলে পাঠিয়েছে মা, আমাকে পাঠাতে পারলো না. And the dropouts, you will see that gradually it's the girls who drop out more than the boys. And everything put together has till date necessitated that Women's Day, as we all know, I'm sure you all believe, that Women's Day is just not one day. Women's Day is every day. কারণ আরেকটা ইংরেজিতে কথা আমরা শুনি না যে we would always say a man works from sun to sun, but a woman's work is never done. And that we've noticed in our families also. Because till, I'm sure many of our lady teachers who come to college, till the last minute, till she clocks the door, she has to look into the matters. Even these things, one by one, these make them sometimes, even a school teacher, sometimes the principal says or the headmistress says, please stay back today. Today we have a meeting. চারটের সময় আজকে মিটিং রয়েছে, আমাদের কিছু কিছু ডিসিশন নিতে হবে. আমি দেখেছি অনেক মহিলা টিচার বলে, ম্যাম আমাকে ফিরতে হবে, মাই শাশুড়ি ইজ আনওয়েল, কিংবা বাচ্চাটাকে স্কুল থেকে আনতে হবে, কিংবা there is some problem. It is always the girl who has to compromise and do the work. I'm not saying it is wrong, but sometimes you have to prioritize. So the awakening has to come from the man. From the man as well as the woman. So it is cooperation. It is cooperation. No one is inferior. No one is superior. নিয়েলসনের রিপোর্টে একটা পড়ছিলাম সেদিন, আমি বসেছিলাম স্টেশনে না এয়ারপোর্টে, সেখানে এই যে একটা নিয়েলসন রিপোর্ট পড়ছিলাম, সেখানে দেখলাম যে ওখানে লেখা আছে that the women are the most stressed, and in India also, because in India especially, the most stressed are also those who splurge most on retail therapy. তার আগে অনেক কিছু কিনে ফেললো. Women are so devalued in our culture that by focusing on themselves, they try to add value. They need to look out and look after themselves, says a psychotherapist. Because everything put together, I feel there has to be a general awareness, a very positive kind of awareness. A awareness na bhishon bhabe dorkar from the very, very primary level, so that in the family, in the office, in the playground, everywhere, jodi eta hoy, নাহলে তো বহু বছর, decades, people were fighting for this equality and equity, but it didn't happen. It took still we are fighting for it. Why? Because we, as I said, that the guilt is weaponized. যদি কিছু ভুল হয় তখন বলবে যে তোমার জন্যই হয়েছে, anything goes wrong with the child, anything goes wrong in the family, if someone, she has to remember that she has to carry curd, দইটা বানানো হয়নি আজকে, কি মাছটা আজকে হয়নি, কিংবা গ্যাসটা বন্ধ করিনি, whatever. All this conditioning, a patriarchal conditioning over the years. I'm sure all of you saw the movie long ago. But I'm old school, absolutely old school. She Obhiman cinema দেখেছিলাম না আমরা when Amitabh Bachchan and Jaya Bahaduri. Remember, she had to undersell herself. She had to undersell herself because she wanted the peace of the family. So many women buy peace because they think if they shine too much, that might cause problem. আর এটা আরো বেশি দুঃখের হয় কারণ আমাদের দেশটাতে এরকম রাজা রামমোহন রয়, ঈশ্বরচন্দ্র বিদ্যাসাগর, মহাত্মা জ্যোতিরাও ফুলে, Swami Dayanand, Saraswati, Mahatma Gandhi, still we are in such a pitiable state where equality of gender econo is still far, far away. আর আমি যেটা বলি, যেটা সবাই আপনারা মানে সবাই over the years we've been talking that women empowerment, what is women empowerment? Refers এরকম একটা environment তৈরি করা, of an environment for women where they can make decisions. এমন decision নিতে পারে যাতে for her own and for the benefits for the society. She has to be productive. She has to loop in people. And then only there will be a marked change. So the responsibility is very much ours. Women empowerment refers to the increasing and improving the social, economic, political, and legal strength of the women to ensure equal right to women and to make them confident enough to claim the rights. এবং এখানে I think so, I hope I have not taken more time because there are so many challenges. মানে সম্ভাবনা আছে এবং অনেক অনেক সমস্যা আছে। চ্যালেঞ্জ গুলো কি? ব্যারিয়ার্স, ওই যে ইনহেরেন্ট সুপিরিয়রিটি কমপ্লেক্স। তারা বলবে না না আমরা তো মহিলাদেরকে পুজো করি, আমাদের তো সব দেবী আছে, দুর্গা আছে, লক্ষ্মী আছে, বাট we don't want to be babies. We want to be human beings. We want to be treated as human beings with human frailties, with human failures, with human emotions, so that we are not treated as goddess with 10 hands and that we can do everything, manage everything. And there should be a high level of domestic respect. And till date, as I mentioned earlier, in our society, the boy child often, till date, I wouldn't say in all families, maybe it is lesser in some of our states than the others. A child often prefers, like, the boy child gets more preference than a girl child. Still exists. So how do we empower women? Education. And the correct education. To degree now. And education through mass communication is very, very important. Both women and men should be made aware of their responsibilities to promote and practice gender equality. The society should be made aware that both the boy child and the girl child are equal. Sensitization programs, আজকের যেটা প্রোগ্রাম হচ্ছে আমাদের প্রত্যেক বছর হয়, এটা আশা রাখি 2047 এটা একটা ল্যান্ডমার্ক. I hope much before that we can create an awareness, and we as women, and this hierarchical unequal thing should be gone. That it is just, I'm going to wind up because I have people waiting for me, so I'll just wind up. And এটা আমার মনে হয়েছে that only constitutional provisions, constitutional policies, social actions, সব কিছু মিলে sensitization, awareness, এটা একটা না movement. Believe me, it is a movement. It is an andolan. And we have to bring about a big change in this empowerment and at large. For society to realize this, all of us, the men, the women, the children, and everyone should treat each other with respect from all stratas of society and let this movement, this Nari Khamotayon, সেটা শুধু যেন নারী ক্ষমতায়নেও আমরা বদ্ধ না রাখতে পারি, নারী যেন সত্যি সত্যি তার নিজের জায়গাটা খুঁজে পায়, আর এই মুভমেন্টটা যেন চলে। And I hope maybe I got I tried to put in many things together, but there is so much to speak. I had a lot of theory অনেক এনেছিলাম কিন্তু আমি বললাম না কারণ যে theory, the breadwinner, how this whole thing evolved, where it came from, and all that. And I'm sure we can keep on discussing all these things. But today, let us take an oath that wherever we are, we will try our level best to make the life of every woman, even if we can reach out to one or two, let us try. Trifles make perfection, and perfection is no trifle. Thank you so much. আর আমি আমার অনেক ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি রামপুরহাট কলেজকে এবং আয়োজকদেরকে এরকম একটা সুন্দর টপিক চুজ করার জন্য, and a very happy Women's Day. And I hope at the background, all the lorai that is going on পৃথিবীতে আমরা শুনেছি না যে Helen of Troy, Helen of all the women were the cause of war. Sita, Draupadi, because of them there are wars. But women starting a war, I can't imagine. So empathy, Shomobati is woman. Good manager is woman. Taking everyone and moving is woman. So let women shine. Happy Women's Day again. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. It was absolutely fascinating listening to you. আপনার লেকচার শুনতে শুনতে ভীষণ মনে পড়লো ভার্জিনিয়া উলফের A Room of One's Own এর কথা। Unless we have a space of our own, unless we have a room of our own, we cannot say that we own our life. I remembered the story of the hypothetical sister of William Shakespeare, Judith, who would have committed suicide if she was alive at that point of time. Your lecture reminded me of one poem by Sylvia Plath. Specifically, the name of the poem is Daddy. I'm sure everyone over here knows about it. These lines: every woman adores a fascist, the boot in the face, the brute heart of a brute like you. So something that we usually think that we women like to be controlled. We women like to be oppressed, shall I say? I don't know. Anyway, I hope that your lecture would be an inspiration for all those who have joined today to claim their rights. As you rightly said, there are many rights that are given to us, but how many of it do we claim? That's the question. I sincerely hope that your lecture instills that energy in us, the urge in us to claim what is ours, the right that is ours, the life that is ours. Thank you very, very much, ma'am, for joining us today. Now we would move on to the second invited lecture of today. We are delighted to have among us Dr. Amrita Banerjee. Dr. Amrita Banerjee is Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of Political Science at Bidhan Chandra College, Asansol, affiliated with Kazi Nazrul University, West Bengal. She also serves as an invitee guest faculty for postgraduate courses in Indian foreign policy and South Asia at Asansol Girls College. She holds both her MA and PhD degrees from the Department of International Relations, Jadavpur University, with over a decade of teaching experience across esteemed institutions, including Jadavpur University and Vivekananda College for Women under the University of Calcutta. Dr. Banerjee brings a blend of rigorous scholarship and pedagogical depth to her field. Her research interests span South Asian geopolitics, human rights, and gender studies, with a particular focus on the trafficking of women and children. She's currently a senior fellow research associate at the Interdisciplinary Institute of Human Security and Governance, New Delhi. Her scholarly engagements have taken her to some of India's most prestigious academic spaces, including Jawaharlal Nehru University, Osmania University, Hyderabad, and other leading platforms where she has presented papers and delivered invited lectures, most recently at the Central University of Jharkhand, Department of International Relations, School of Social Sciences, Ranchi, in March 2025. Dr. Banerjee is a contributor to prominent national dailies and weeklies such as The Statesman, Doinik Jagaran, Rashtriya Sahara, Shaptak, and Organizer, where she combines critical academic insight with accessible public commentary. She has earned recognition and royalties for her published works in World Focus, a reputed international affairs journal based in New Delhi. Today, Dr. Banerjee will tell us about women trafficking and the different issues and threats related to that. So we are delighted to invite Dr. Banerjee. Amritadi, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much. I think I'm audible and visible too.
Yes, Amritadi, you are.
Okay. Thank you, first of all, Professor Shreya Chakraborty, for such a nice introduction. Before I start, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Chief Patron, Dr. Ashish Banerjee, Patron, the Principal of the College, Dr. Probal Kumar Sinha, the coordinators, the conveners of the organizing committee, and definitely to Professor Shreya Chakraborty for kindly inviting me to serve as a resource person and deliver the lecture at this international seminar, which is being organized by Rampurhat College, IQAC, and on the broader theme of the pillars for shaping women empowerment for Viksit Bharat 2047. And it is truly an honor to be part of such a significant academic platform. So the topic today I will be speaking on, as it has been mentioned by Shreya Madam, that it will be on definitely on trafficking. But I have given a kind of a name. I've given a name like Stolen Futures. Why human trafficking? It threatens and it is creating a kind of a threat towards the promise of creating the Viksit Bharat 2047. So as a whole, if I say, then it will be like this: Stolen Futures, why human trafficking threatens the promise of Viksit Bharat 2047. Now, if I say, like, if we dream, or the dream of Viksit Bharat 2047, how it looks like, it is very much bold, very much inspiring. But, and definitely it envisions an India that stands tall at the commemorations of its independence, and economically, which is very much powerful, technologically, which is very much advanced, and globally, which is being very much respected, and socially, if we talk, then it is very much progressive. Now, the thing that has been expressed by leaders, which includes our own Prime Minister, Narendra Modi sir. So this vision speaks of high-speed infrastructure, now digital transformation, innovations, ecosystems, and there are demographic dividends. But there is a but. But beneath the glow of this aspiration lies a kind of a quote-unquote question that we cannot ignore. And the question is that, can a nation truly develop if its women and girls remain vulnerable to trafficking or such issues? Now, this is a question which came to my mind. Now, if development is measured only in the GDP growth, the expressways or the semi-conductor plants and global summits, then perhaps the answer is yes. But if development is measured in dignity, in safety, and freedom of choice, the answer becomes, what will I say, very much deeply uncomfortable. Okay, so the human trafficking, it's not a new phenomenon. It's something which was there. Maybe the name was in a different form, but it is not just a criminal justice issue. It is a non-conventional security threat, which is complex, which is adaptive, which is transnational, and very much deeply gendered. Now, it intersects with certain things. We all know, just I'm giving a kind of a hint, that is, we know about poverty, we know about the climate changes, migration issues, which takes a very crucial role, organized crime, digital platform, which is, nowadays, which is very much relevant, and structural inequality, which was there present from the very, during the formation of our state or society, we can say. So it does not simply violate the laws. What it violates? It violates the futures. So for decades, if I talk, for decades after the independence, security in India, it was being understood in conventional terms only. Now, we have to understand firstly that what is the difference that exists between a convention and non-conventional security threat. So what is a conventional terms? In terms of conventional thing, that is protection of territorial integrity, defense against external aggression, the military preparedness, and the border management. Now, in this classical state-centric framework, the security, it meant the protections of sovereignty. And the state was the referent object. An army was the shield. So, but after this post-Cold War, the world has altered this understanding. It made a kind of a dynamic shift. Okay, so what it was, the threats were no longer only on the tanks and missiles. Okay, they became virus, floods, cyber attacks, and the most important thing, the focus of this paper is a trafficking network. Now, so security made a kind of a shift from the protection of territory to the protection of people. So the non-conventional security, it recognizes that a nation can be militarily strong, yet which is socially very much fragile, and it accepts that insecurity can grow silently within the borders and through inequality, organized crime, and environmental challenges. Now, human trafficking, it falls squarely within this expanded paradigm. So it operates where across borders, exploits the socio-economic vulnerability, which flourishes in regulatory gaps, and it strengthens the criminal syndicates, I can say. Yes. So it weakens the governance and corrodes the trust in the institutions, and it is not simply a law and order problem, but it is a kind of a structural insecurity which is embedded in the society itself. Here I would like to say that whenever we talk about the trafficking issue, we should remember one fact that this is a kind of an issue which even if people talk about, but we should remember one thing, that it is something which is which remains, under the layers after layers of silence. Okay, so if I talk from the historical backdrop or continuum of exploitations, then I would like to say that, in South Asia, if we talk about South Asia, because I'm talking about South Asia, but we have to remember that trafficking is such a business which is taking place all over the world. Okay, but I'm confining it into, because the time constraint and all, I can't take the name of each and every country. So if I talk from the perspective of South Asia, so South Asia not emerged in the, it never emerged from the age of smartphones. Its roots always stretch deep, into the history. And the colonial labor extraction systems, they normalize the movement of populations for different kind of, the profits, and like the bonded labor practices, then patriarchal traditions, which includes the exploitative religious and feudal structure. It reduced the women's autonomy and informal cross-border migration. Particularly if I talk about, because I have done my work on Indo-Nepal, so if I talk about between India and Nepal, so became both an, economic necessity and a site of vulnerability. So post-independence economic disparity between the, the rural and the urban regions, it intensified the migration flows and the metropolitan demands, for the cheap labor or the domestic workers, commercial sexual exploitations. It created a kind of a market. And by the late 20th century, it has taken a form of an organized criminal syndicates and had a professionalized trafficking routes with changes. And what once appeared as localized exploitation evolved into the transnational networks with the financial sophistications. Now, so the crime adopted a kind of, we can say it adopted a kind of modernization. Okay, and it urbanized, it is very much digitized, and it is very much globalized. Now, the human rights crisis, definitely it exists when we talk about development. So human rights crisis is there. Now, at its core, so trafficking is a brutal violations of human rights, which is a known fact to all of us. It strives what? Individuals what? As I have mentioned earlier also, dignity, autonomy, bodily integrity, and it transforms the human beings into commodities, right? So the right to life and dignity, it becomes very much meaningless when we talk about violence, psychological trauma, which exists in a daily, it is a kind of a daily existence which takes place. And the freedom from exploitation collapses into, as we know, into forced prostitutions. Then there is, bonded labor, there is domestic servitude and organ trade. Now the right to livelihood becomes very much what? Distorted when economic desperations is being manipulated into the kind of an entrapment. So the right to equality is very much being mocked. And when marginalized caste, tribal and borderland communities, they are disappropriately, they are being targeted. Okay, so ma'am was also talking about the drop dropout issues. Though I couldn't hear the lectures thoroughly, but I've heard this portion. She was talking about, Meenakshi ma'am was talking about this. So I would also like to mention that, during the time of the pandemic issue, the time of pandemic, when it was going on, okay, there were students because in our college where I teach, it is in Asansol, and there are many first generation learners. They are the first generation learners. And during that time, we know that in what way, the whole system was functioning. The system was functioning through an online mode, and technically none of the teachers, nor the students, they were being sound. Now the students who are the first generation learner, what we expect from them? We expect that they will, put on their mobile phone or laptop, use the Wi-Fi, network issues, blah, blah, blah things, and they will join the class. We know the percentile of students, I don't know. Generally, students avoid coming to the colleges. But during the time of fest, I find students, so many students, the ground is full of students. But yes, during that time, what happened? Most of the female counterpart of our student, they became more dropout. The candidatures, it increased in number. And then I tried to find out. I called some of my students, and what they said, quote unquote, madam, घर से ये बोला गया है कि पैंडेमिक खत्म होने के बाद हम लोग का शादी करवा दिया जाएगा, क्योंकि ऐसे करके पढ़ाई करके फायदा क्या है? So this is a kind of a mindset which prevails in our society, and कहीं से अगर ये लड़की लोग कोई गलत हाथ में आ जाए, किसी के गलत हाथ में आ जाए, तो वहां से they don't know that how their dignity will be safeguarded or how they will be safeguarded, because we don't know that we are somewhere other. What I feel sometimes, we are being, surrounded by traffickers or the dalals, okay, who creates a kind of a blind spots, and they target it. And they target from this kind of situations, especially the young girls. And definitely they are the first generation learners. Why they are thinking it? Because poverty persists, because there is, the education is very much fragile. And definitely the patriarchy, it always remains unquestioned, and where environmental, instability and livelihood, these things are being deeply rooted. So this is just an example which I thought to share it with you all. So the gendered face of insecurity, what it is all about. Now, trafficking is not gender neutral. I'm not saying that. Okay, it is overwhelmingly, it is somewhere other. Yes, it is being feminized, and the patriarchal norms, it restrict women's economic independence. We know about dowry pressure, commodifying the daughters, lack of property ownership limits the bargaining power. Now, educational dropout rates, that what I have mentioned in the, the vulnerable districts. Okay, it deepen the dependency, and early marriages. Okay, this is something, it is not only written in the books, in actual fact, it takes place. Now also it takes place. It exists. And add the climatic stress to these equations like, flood, then the river erosions, displacing the, entire families, then the erratic monsoons, destabilizing the agriculture. So, and there are multiple vulnerability which are there present. And when crop fails and death rises, daughters too often becomes coping mechanisms in fragile economies. So gender inequality combined with the environmental stress and unsafe migration pathway always creates a trafficking pipeline. And this is not at all incidental criminality. It is very, very much systematic. And why this is systematic, I will say, but before that, I would like to emphasize on this is a kind of why it is called as the national security threat. So it is as I have mentioned, that it is a kind of an issue which is not rhetorical exaggerations, but it is an analytical necessity. And, it strengthens organized crimes, the profit, which is being the most important thing, the profit which is being generated, from exploitations, often intersect with other illicit economies, like we know about it, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, forged documentations, creating, the shadow financial system that erode the state authority, etc. Now, it also undermines border governance and porous and open borders, which is economically beneficial and can create a kind of a jurisdictional gray zones exploited by the criminal network. So we can say that it also damages the international credibility, and the nation aspiring to the global, the leadership. It cannot ignore the systematic human rights vulnerabilities within its own borders. So economic growth without human security, it creates a kind of a paradox. And so, like the visible strength build upon a kind of a invisible fragility. So these are the consequences when falls into, we call it that, yes, it is a kind of it is a national security threat. And as I have mentioned, that during the time of the COVID-19, the lockdown phase, when it was there, it was a kind of a nightmare. And suddenly the school closures, it always pushed mainly. That's the reason why I've given that example. That it always pushed the girls out of the classrooms, and they never returned, and nobody is bothered. If you go and ask that how many migrants were being migrated during the time of COVID, I don't think any of the governments can give you a proper data, because they also know that it is not possible. I don't know the reason. The government people might be knowing it well, though I'm working on it, but I didn't find out any kind of, the solid reasons to speak on, or to give a kind of a very bold emphasis. Anyways, so we know that the lockdown, it restricted the physical mobility, accelerated the digital, vulnerability, and the traffickers, they shifted the thing from offline to online. So how they used, what were the medium? Most important is social media. Okay. Grooming, fake job portals, messages, gaps. I don't know. Nowadays, I find different kind of reels which people make, which I dislike. And, the exploitations, like this way, I think that is kind of a, exploitation. They are also opening. There's a online sexual exploitation. We are giving this kind of name. I don't know exact name, but I feel this is online sexual exploitations, which is being allowed to abuse without the physical transport. So COVID-19 was a situation. It did not invent trafficking, but what was my point to emphasize? That it digitalized and decentralized it. Okay, so this was my emphasis, why I was continuously, trying to give emphasis on this particular phase, for which today also I'm here, not physically there present, but online mode, I'm there somewhere else presenting the paper, delivering the lecture. So the changing, so what it is called? It is called the changing modus operandi in the digital age. So the trafficking networks are no more, it's no more agile. And they operate through, micro cells rather than the centralized brothel system. And it is being layered. There are kind of layered financial channels to evade trafficking. So they exploit climate displaced populations. They blend romance scams with recruitment traps. And the crime has evolved from visible red light districts to invisible digital ecosystem. Law enforcement, often structured for traditional patterns, struggles to keep pace with algorithms driven what? Exploitation. So the battlefield has been shifted from physical borders to the virtual space. So now the debate, if I talk about the debate which is coming out, or which generally comes out when we talk about this kind of issue, is about the security and the humanitarian framing. So this is, however, a critical debate, because some scholars, they warn that labeling trafficking as a national security threat, it risks over securitizations, and militarized responses may kind of prioritize the border controls over the victims and rehabilitation processes, and the survivors may be misidentified as illegal migrants, and surveillances may intensify while structural inequalities remain very much unaddressed. So this critique is very much valid, that security language, it can empower enforcement, but it can also obscure the compassion. The solution lies not in abandoning the security framing, but in redefining it. And human security, not militarized, it is not at all militarized security. It must have a guide policy, and protections may center on dignity, not detention. So what is, when I'm talking about dignity, so what is a development with dignity? What it is all about? Development happening and you're getting your dignity. So you're talking about the main theme or the focus of the conference or the seminar which is taking place. So if Viksit, it's all about Viksit Bharat. So if Viksit Bharat 2047 is to be more than an economic slogan, so it must embed what? Dignity into its architecture. And infrastructure expansions must be very much matched with safe migration system. Yes, Digital India must include digital literacy for rural women. You and me, we know about certain facts, but there are people who are from very downtrodden. They don't know about it. Okay, so we have to reach out to them. And climate adaptations, it must, it must incorporate the gender-sensitive planning, economic growth. It must somewhere or other translate it to the economic ownership for women. So development cannot be reduced, to smart cities and defense capacity, but it must include security of the body, security of and security of the future. And a nation's progress, I must say, is measured not only by how fast it grows, but how safely its most vulnerable people can dream of. So, by 2047, India may indeed be very much economically, powerful. It may host so many other, global summits. Just 1 week or 2 weeks before, there were several summits. I think everybody knows about AI. There was sustainable something. There was summits which was going on. So global summits and all. So this lead the technological, the revolutions, and it shaped the geopolitical narratives. But the deeper the test will be very much quieter, because will every woman be free to choose her destiny without coercion, without deceptions or displacement. So human trafficking, it steals, more than labor, and it steals possibilities. It steals our education. It steals autonomy and time. It steals the futures. So, and a nation that allows its daughters' future to be stolen, they cannot fully claim development. That is not possible. And true Viksit Bharat will not be secured only by stronger borders or high growth rates. It will be secured when dignity becomes non-negotiable, when no girl's ambition is traded in the shadows of progress, and only when will development and justice, they walk together in this 2047 era. And we also should remember that here I will take just some seconds. I must talk about the film, Mardani. Okay, there are lots of phases, 1, 2, 3. And, it gives a very inspiring, it reassures courage, can dismantle, the powerful criminal networks. But courage in real life, it does not receive the cinematic background music. You have to understand this. And what happens when a kind of a women who speak, the truth, they are not being applauded. I don't know how many of you will agree with me or not, but that's what I feel. And, they are rather being isolated, I will say that. And when empowerment, it exists in speeches, yet silence is being, enforced in the corridors. And real life heroines, rarely they receive the cinematic redemption arcs. Because if we generally aspire to a developed nation by 2047, empowerment cannot remain symbolic. Okay, because it must be structural. It must protect the truth teller as fiercely as it celebrates the the achiever. And a society is not being measured by how loudly it applauds its heroines on screen, but how justly it treats its women off screen. Again, I would like to thank Rampurhat College for giving this opportunity. Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank Dr. Amrita Banerjee for this excellent session on women trafficking. Trafficking, as ma'am was beautifully explaining, that is an act of transporting for commercial purpose. And as we know, the word trafficking, that means something related with the idea of benefit. And listening to the word women trafficking, that itself is very harrowing. as it clearly indicates at how women have been seen as a product. So that is definitely how they have been seen as dehumanized. They are dehumanized. So I was just thinking about, while listening to ma'am, where exactly we are. On one hand, we are talking about women's achievement, a goal that is Viksit Bharat 2047. On the other hand, women are fighting for basic rights, human rights. They are fighting for to be called, to be considered, to be treated as a human being. So I think we must need to work on that gap, that lacuna, where we are now standing. Right. So ma'am has explained issues related with the concept of women trafficking, especially emphasizing on its digital aspects, which is now taking place invisibly. And as we all know, we all are now digital consumers. And I just hope this lecture appears to be very helpful to all the women over there. So I would request all the women listening to ma'am's lecture, joining us on the platform, just be safe, choose to be a human being, not a product. Thank you, ma'am. Once again, thank you, ma'am, for being with us, for joining us, and delivering a wonderful lecture. That was a brilliant session. Thank you once again. Now we will move to the next segment of our program. Our third speaker, Dr. Shubhashree Vishakha, our invited speaker, our next invited speaker. We are truly honored to have with us Dr. Vishakha as our next speaker. So a little bit about ma'am, who she is. She is currently a postdoctoral fellow in the Aging and Metabolism Research Program at the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation in Oklahoma City, USA. She earned her bachelor degree in zoology from Rishi Bankim Chandra College, West Bengal State University, and her master's degree in zoology with specialization in cytogenetics and molecular biology from the University of Kolkata. She completed her PhD in reproductive biology at Vishakha University, where she specialized in molecular and cellular endocrinology. Dr. Vishakha's research focuses on ovarian aging, with particular emphasis on mitochondrial genetics, cellular heterogeneity, and microenvironmental regulation of oocyte quality. Her work has significantly advanced our understanding of how mitochondrial DNA variation influences ovarian aging trajectories and reproductive lifespan. Using genetically heterogeneous rat models and innovative cellular labeling strategies, she investigates how mitochondrial genotypes shapes ovarian microenvironment and reproductive lifespan. Using genetically heterogeneous rat models and innovative cellular labeling strategies, she investigates how mitochondrial genotype, please excuse me if I have pronounced it in a wrong way, shapes ovarian microenvironment and age-related decline in fertility. Her research contributions have been published in several reputed international journals, including Frontiers in Cell and Developmental Biology, Free Radical Biology and Medicine, and Environmental Pollution. In addition to her strong research portfolio, she serves as an ad hoc reviewer for leading journals such as Nature Aging, Nature Reviews, Endocrinology, Aging Cell, and several others in the fields of aging, reproduction, and environmental health. Dr. Vishakha has received numerous honors, including the Age Voyager Grant OMRF Postdoctorate Award and multiple Best Poster and Presentation Awards at national and international conferences. Her work lies at the intersection of reproductive biology, aging research, and mitochondrial genetics, and it promises to shape our understanding of female reproductive health and longevity. We are delighted to have her with us today to share her insights and expertise. Ma'am, please excuse me if I have wrongly pronounced any word that is very science specific. So you are most welcome in our college. The stage is yours. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me right. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Okay, a very good afternoon to all of you present in this seminar. I want to start by thanking all the organizers of Rampurhat College for giving me this opportunity and inviting me to talk on this wonderful event. It's truly an honor to be part of this important discussion. And I would also like to take a moment to thank Dr. Alpana Mukherjee, who personally talked to me, and she invited me for this talk, and I happily agreed to it. And I know her since my PhD days. She's a wonderful person, and it's always a pleasure to reconnect.
Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt you. Your PPT is not visible to us. It's not still visible.
Again.
Okay, now it's okay. No. Right. Okay, now it's okay, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so a lot of people have covered women empowerment brilliantly. There were so many eminent voices today. And as for me, I'm just a researcher. I only know how to talk about data science and technology. So that's what I'm going to do today. But I promise that it is just as empowering as the other talks. So when we talk about women empowerment, we often think about careers, education, leadership, or financial independence, right? But there is one more important pillar that is actually supporting all these aspects, and that is women's health. And one of the organs that is very important for a woman's life and health span both is ovary. And that is why it's very important to study ovarian aging, which is what I do. That is my research. And today I'm going to talk very briefly about what is ovarian aging and why it matters for women's health. And I hope you all will understand why I'm focusing or emphasizing so much on the aging after this talk. So before I start with ovarian aging, I always want the audience to know what an ovary looks like, how it functions normally. So an ovary is basically composed of many small structures. As you can see here, these are follicles. And these follicles are actually made up inside with an egg, which is actually surrounded by the follicle cells. And if you see here on the, let me put on my laser, on the right, that these follicles can grow in different stages. So when a female hits puberty, these germ cell nests that are actually made by very small follicles called primordial follicles, they undergo development and they turn into primary follicle, then move to secondary follicle, and ultimately becomes a mature follicle that is actually able to undergo ovulation. And this is very important to know that women are born with all the eggs they will ever have, which means that যখন একটা female born হয়, she has all the eggs, and it is a non-renewable and non-replenishable resource. So once a female is born, there will never be more egg production later in her life. And as you can see in this graph, that at birth, she is born with around 1 to 2 million of eggs. And as she reaches her puberty, this egg count, it starts to gradually decrease. And at puberty, you can see the number reaches to from 1 to 2 million to around 300 to 500,000. And further, when the women age, you can see how drastically it drops. So this is actually what ovarian aging means. With age, the woman starts to decrease its egg reserve. And you can see that the optimal fertility period is considered between the age of 18 to 31. And after the early 30s, there's a drastic decline in the egg number. And when there's very few number of eggs left in the ovary, the woman hits menopause, when there's no more menstrual cycle and the woman is not able to ovulate any more eggs. And this is concerning because, as you can see in this graph, that female fertility compared to other functions in the body, it decreases or it declines way, way earlier than the other organ systems, like lung function, kidney function, heart function, or nervous system. You can see that how drastically the female fertility drops after the mid-30s, and eventually it reaches menopause at around 50 years of age. And this is the typical age period. So before a female hits menopause, it undergoes a cycle of perimenopause where the ovarian function starts to decline and there's hormonal fluctuations. This period is called perimenopause, and it's usually around 35 to 38 years of age. And the menopause is on an average around 52 years of age. But the point that I want to emphasize is that female fertility or the ovary, it's not just about reproduction, or it's not just about fertility. Because once a woman hits menopause, when the menstrual cycle stops, it leads to many, many other women's health problems. So the menopause is also associated with a lot of cardiovascular diseases, osteoporosis, which is actually bone loss. So female starts to experience osteoporosis or bone loss, and also diseases like neurodegeneration. So it's not at all everything about reproduction, but it is also associated to many, many other women's health problems. And that is why studying ovarian aging is so important. This is another thing that I like to talk about. It's a growing gap between menopause and lifespan. So why ovarian aging is important? You can see in this graph that the age of menopause, which I earlier said that it's around 52 years of age, it's kind of constant, right? It remained constant throughout these years. But the life expectancy, which means that how long a woman will live, is increasing with advancing medical facilities, because now we have very good medical advancements in our country. So women are now living more years. So this is kind of concerning because it means two things. The average age of menopause is constant, but due to the increase in life expectancy, now women are spending more years in the postmenopausal period, which means they will be prone to more and more systemic health problems. So with menopause and with life expectancy increase, there will be more risk for chronic diseases, and the women would have decreased health span, which means that she would suffer a lot during her later periods after the postmenopausal period. And that is why we are studying this field, and we want to slow ovarian aging, which may help women to stay healthier for longer. So basically, our goal is not to have women after 50 years to produce more babies. It's not that thing. But we want that women should live a healthier life after she hits menopause, because with menopause, it brings a lot more diseases. So we want women to live a healthier life, and that's why we want to slow ovarian aging. So as I depicted earlier, that ovarian aging is associated with reduced number of eggs. So the quantity of eggs reduces, but it's not just about the quantity. The quality of the eggs also starts to reduce. You can see in this graph, so on the left axis, these are the number of follicles. And on the right axis, it is the number or the percentage of poor quality follicles or oocytes. So you can see with the age that how the number of follicles is declining. And on the same hand, how the proportion of poor quality oocytes are increasing. So it's not just the quantity, it's also the quality that gets worse and worse with age. And this is just a picture from a paper that shows that you can see that this is the spindle organization of an oocyte or the follicle inside the ovary. You can see how well established the chromosome plate and the tubules, the microtubules are in the young female. It's 20 years old. But as soon as the female starts to get old, or it becomes like 45 years of old, how the spindle structures get disrupted. And this is very lethal, because if the spindle organization is not proper in the oocytes, it can lead to fatal birth consequences. So the child born, it can not be born either, or it can have adverse consequences, like many genetic problems. So with aging, all these things starts accumulating. And I just talked about follicles, right, till now. So I just talked that the ovary is composed of follicles, but it's not just the follicles. So these are the follicles, but apart from the follicles, there are many, many other kind of cell types. And that's why we call ovary as a dynamic and heterogeneous organ. And you can see that apart from the follicles, there are cells called stromal cells, which are actually fibroblasts. There are cells called luteal cells. There are epithelial cells. There are some immune cells as well. And there are also some blood cells, which are actually called endothelial cells. And aging does not just affect the follicles or the oocytes, but it also affects all these other cell types. So as you can see here, how the structure of the ovary changes with age, aging actually affects every corner of the ovary. It can lead to epigenetic changes in the ovary. It can lead to high oxidative stress. It can lead to more mutations in the mitochondrial DNA. It can lead to more inflammation as well. There can be more apoptosis, which is actually cell death. And there's also more and more mitochondrial dysfunction. So this is the aim, that why we want to study ovarian aging, because there are so many cell types in the ovary, and we actually don't know that whether it's just the follicles that is getting affected, or whether it's all the other cell types that I just showed, whether all these cell types are also involved in leading this ovarian aging. And that is what our goal is. So today I would be just focusing on two topics. I will just briefly touch on these two hallmarks of ovarian aging. Ovarian aging is associated with high levels of fibrosis. So what is actually fibrosis? When an ovary or any other organ that when becomes aged, it becomes more and more stiff, and there's more and more collagen accumulation inside the organ. And that is what is called fibrosis. And inflammation as well. And I hope that many of you might be knowing, for the students, that you guys might know that what inflammation is. It brings a lot of immune cells in the ovary, and it gradually increases with age. So our goal is to identify that which cell types in the ovary are actually driving these hallmarks in the aging ovary. And for this, we are using a single cell transcriptomic approach. And I included this approach because I think it's very important for the audience, or this mainly the students, to know that how the world is advancing in terms of technologies, in terms of the technologies we are using in the research to advance the field for making women's health more better. So I wanted to include this particular technology here. It is called single cell transcriptomics. So just to explain what is single cell RNA sequencing before going into what we observed in our model, I want to give a very brief workflow of what single cell RNA sequencing looks like. So consider this as an ovary. So this is a ball of fruits, right? You can see different kind of fruits. It has strawberries, it has oranges, it has berries, it has apples. So this is similar to an ovary. Ovary is also made up of different cell types like I showed. So if you extract RNA from all of this together, it becomes a smoothie, right? So this is a smoothie, and you don't know that how many strawberries are in here, how many oranges were there, or how many berries are there, right? And that is what the single cell RNA sequencing offsets. So the single cell RNA sequencing tells us that which fruit or which cell type, so each fruit is depicting a particular cell type here. So which cell type is actually responsible for any change we observe in the ovary. So that is why we use the single cell approach, because we wanted to know which particular cell type was causing it. And this is a very brief and simple workflow how we do the single cell RNA sequencing in our laboratory. So what we do is we take an ovary, we isolate the ovaries from the animal, we dissociate it very gently into a single cell suspension. So all the cells are now single cell. And then this single cell are captured inside a droplet. And then, as you can see here, so this is the droplet, this is the cell, and then this cell is made to lyse, to release all the mRNAs that is inside it. So once the mRNAs are released inside this droplet, it is attached to a barcode. So barcode is like an address to the cell. So it determines from which cell type this mRNA came from. And that is why the mRNAs are tagged with this UMI, or it is called barcoding. And then these mRNAs are converted to cDNAs or DNA, and then we put them in a sequencer, we sequence them, and we know that what changes are happening in each of these cell types. And we use a lot of bioinformatic tools. So these are different kind of algorithms where with the use of which you can tell that which cell type is what. So you can see that here you have a cell type A, you have cell type B, you have cell type C. So you can use this bioinformatics to know that what were the cell types in the ovary. So just to briefly go through what I had in my data set. So I used rats. And why did I use rats over mice? Like a lot of people use mice as a model. Excuse me. So for rats, they have larger ovaries because they are larger in size, right? So they have larger ovaries, so I can get a lot of cells with them, with rats over mice. So that is the main benefit that we got with rats over mice. And this was our experimental design. So what we did to study ovarian aging is we took 3 different age points. So we took 4-month-old rats, which depicts reproductively young group, the 9-month-old, which depicts the mid-reproductive age, or it's when the reproductive aging just starts, and the 14-month-old, which is the reproductively aged group. So this is actually old group. So each animal has 2 ovaries. So we used 1 ovaries to do the single cell transcriptomics that I showed in the previous slide. And with the right ovary, what we did is we fixed them to do some histological analysis. So we fixed them in a fixative, then we made blocks out of it, and then we sectioned in a microtome on some slides, and we did some histological analysis. So what I got is from the single cell data set is after all the QC analysis and all the bioinformatics part, we got all these different cell types in our data set. So you can see there are stromas, there are oocytes, there are luteal cells, there are some immune cells like B cells, dendritic cells, phagocytes, T cells, NK cells, which are the natural killer cells, and also some blood cells like endothelium. There are some epithelium. So what was important is this is the number of cells that we got after all the QC things. And this is way, way more what previous researchers got with other models. So this is the benefit of using rats. So coming to the first part of my story, which is fibrosis. Like I said, I will be discussing 2 axes today. One is fibrosis and one is inflammation. And you can see that this is how a reproductively young ovary looks like. And when it gets reproductively old, it starts to have more stiffness. So it starts to get more stiff and hard. And that is actually because of the collagen content in the reproductively old tissue that starts to increase. So like any other organs, the ovary also becomes increasingly fibrotic with age. So this doesn't just happen in ovary, it's actually kind of universal, and it happens in many other tissues that with age, it becomes more and more fibrotic, it becomes more stiff, and it starts to have more collagen. So this is the histological analysis that I was talking about. So what we did is we sectioned some of the ovaries from the 3 age points that we chose, and we did a picrocereus red staining. So this is a stain that is specifically for collagen. It's basically for collagen type 1 and type 3. So you can see how the 9 months and the 14 months are so red. So these are all the red fibers that are collagen type 1 and type 3. And you can see how with age it is increasing so much. So we also did a quantification in this graph, and you can see how the staining percent, it increases with age. But the question, like I said before, was which cell type is actually driving this ovarian fibrosis? Because this is a picture of the whole ovary, right? And these are all the collagen inside it. But we do not know that which cell type in the ovary is actually causing all this deposition of the collagen. So that was our goal, that which cell type is actually causing this. So for this, we went back to our single cell data set. I know this is a lot, but let's focus on the top 2. So this is split by ages, and you can see that the stroma cell type and the theca cell type, they are the ones that increased the most with age. So you see how the stroma and the theca went from 31% to 48% and 5% to 11.5%. So we focused on these 2 particular cell types to know that which of them are actually driving this. So what you can do with bioinformatics is that you can take these 2 cell types and you can again split it into different cell types. So we could identify very different cell types between these stroma and theca cell types. So there were fibroblasts, there were smooth muscles, there were theca cells, there were pericytes. So these are all kind of stroma and theca cell types. And on the below graph, you can see that how one of the fibroblast population, it started to increase. So this is the percentage of cells, the percentage of fibroblasts. It goes from 9% in the young to 31% in the old. So this was the cell type that was actually probably causing this collagen accumulation, because fibroblast is the cell type that is mostly associated with collagen production, collagen synthesis, and then exporting it out in the ovary or in the extracellular matrix. So we wanted to be confirmatory about it. So what we did next is we had these ovaries. So we isolated these fibroblasts out of these ovaries and we stained them for collagen. So vimentin is actually a fibroblast marker. So you can see that all of them are vimentin positive, which means that these are fibroblast cell types. And then we stained with collagen. So col1A1 is a collagen subtype. And you can see that in the young group, there's very little amount of collagen, which is in green. You can see that it's fluorescing green. It's very little. But in the old group, you see a lot of deposition inside each of these fibroblasts, which means that with age, the collagen deposition or the synthesis is actually increasing. So it confirmed our data from the single cell RNA-seq, and this is a confirmation at the protein level too. So we can say that fibrosis can be a target to delay ovarian aging, because that's the ultimate goal, that how to delay ovarian aging. And to delay ovarian aging, we must know what's happening inside the ovary. So now we know that the aged ovary accumulates a lot of collagen inside it. It becomes more fibrotic. So if we can have some anti-fibrotic drugs that can act on these fibroblasts that are actually synthesizing these collagens, we can target this collagen synthesis and we can delay ovarian aging. So this is an ongoing research. Coming to the next part of my story, this is the last part of my story, which is inflammation. And I will just focus on T cells because that is what increased in our single cell data set. So this is also a graph from our single cell data set. And you can see the T cells goes from 4% in the young group to 8% in the 14 months of old. And this is just a graph showing the same thing here, that how at 14 months of age, the T cells, which is a kind of immune cells, are increasing with age. And we did the same because we wanted to know that which kind of T cells are actually responsible, because I'm not sure if you all know that T cells can be of different subtypes. They can be CD8 positive, which are the cytotoxic cell type. They can be CD4 positive, which are the helper T cells. There are some stromal immune cells. There are some mitotic immune cells that they are called mitotic because they can proliferate. So we wanted to know that which particular T cell is actually causing this inflammation or the rise in the doubling of T cells. So we again split it into different clusters and we identified these 4 different cell types in these T cells. And when we split it by age, we saw that the CD8 positive, which is the cytotoxic T cell, these are actually increasing with age and not the others. So the green is the 4 months, which is the young. The orange is the 9 months, which is the mid-reproductive age. And the blue is the 14 months, which is the old group. And you can see that compared to the green, both the red and the blue are higher in percentage, which means that the CD8 positive T cells are actually increasing with age and not the other type of T cells. So this is one of the most interesting findings from our lab. This is a particular cell type which are called multinucleated giant cells. They have a huge implication in inflammation. So I don't think anybody is aware what are multinucleated giant cells. So actually nobody apart from the ovarian field is aware of what are multinucleated giant cells. It's pretty recent. So these multinucleated giant cells are actually macrophages. So when the tissue is reproductively young, the macrophages are isolated. And when they start to become old, the tissue starts to become old, these macrophages, what they do is they fuse together and they form these big structures. So if you can see here, the green structures. So these are all the multinucleated giant cells that are formed by the fusion of macrophages. And why do they fuse? So that might be the question that might be coming to your mind right now. So they fuse because with age, there are a lot of cell death happening. There are a lot of debris that are accumulating inside the ovary. And I just showed you how the fibrosis is also happening with age. So much of collagen is depositing in the ovary. So there should be some cells that need to filter these debris out of the ovary. And one macrophage is so tiny that it's not possible for a little macrophage to ingest these debris and digest it. So that is why what they do is the macrophages, they fuse together to form a very big structure, and then they are able to digest or ingest all these collagen fibers or the debris that is accumulating with age inside the ovary. And that is why with age, you can find that these multinucleated giant cells are forming. And this is just a representation, a picture that shows how these multinucleated giant cells appear in histological sections. So the first is a very basic hematoxylin and eosin staining, and you can see all these brown things. So these are actually these multinucleated giant cells. And when you stain it with Sudan black B, it stains bluish black in color. So that is what we used to quantify these multinucleated giant cells in our model. So this is how it looks. We use Sudan black B staining, and you see in the 4 months, there's like very little this blue-black staining, but as soon as it hits the mid-reproductive age or the old age, you can see these tiny dots. It's like, it's the whole ovary. So if I can magnify, this is the magnified image. And these are all these MNGCs that are stained with Sudan black B staining. And this is just the graphical representation of this staining. And you can see compared to the 4 months, how these MNGCs increase in number with age. So why I'm talking about these multinucleated giant cells all of a sudden? So this might be the question. So there is a very recent paper from our lab that showed that these multinucleated giant cells, or MNGCs, we call them, we abbreviate them as MNGCs, they actually can co-localize with T cells. So remember how I showed that the T cells were increasing with age, and these MNGCs are also increasing with age. So maybe there could be a possible association between the increase in both of these kind of cell types. So there could be a possible localization of these MNGCs with the T cells that might be actually leading to more and more inflammation in the aging ovary. So to do this, the single cell sequencing was not enough, because with the single cell, you cannot tell the localization of the cells. So that is why we went for spatial transcriptomics. So this is actually also an advancement of the single cell. So you can have a single cell resolution, but now what you can have an add-on to this is you now know that which cell type is located where in the tissue. So this is a very simple workflow that I made specifically for the students to understand. So this is a tissue section. If you section the tissues, what we do is we place them in these special slides available for spatial transcriptomics. You place this thin tissue on the slides, and then you add some enzymes that can amplify or that can convert the mRNA into the cDNA. So the mRNAs on this tissue can be converted to cDNA, and then we do the same thing. We make it go through the sequencer, and we do the data analysis. But now you know, so if you consider this as an ovarian section, now you know that which cell type is located where, right? So this is a very good add-on to the single cell transcriptomics. So this is called spatial transcriptomics because now you have the spatial information. And you can see here that these gray color things, the gray dots, these are actually multinucleated giant cells. So these gray color dots are actually GPNMB mRNA. So the GPNMB mRNA is a marker for these multinucleated giant cells. So these are colored in gray here, and the circles that are in white and the borders are in red, these are the T cells. These are the CD8 T cells. And you see how these are closely associated with these MNGCs. So this whole thing is, this is a ovarian tissue from a 14 months old ovary. And each of these things are a particular cell type. So you can see how these MNGCs are closely associated with T cells. So concluding my talk here, this is the ongoing research that we are doing. Now we are targeting the fibrosis. We are also trying to target the MNGC. So our ultimate goal is to reduce the accumulation of fibrosis, the accumulation of collagen, and also target these specialized cell type that are the fusion of macrophages, which are called multinucleated giant cells. If we can target these two things, it might delay ovarian aging. Well, we actually have evidence. I have not included these in my slide, but we do have evidence that shows that targeting both these things are actually delaying ovarian aging. It's extending fertility. Women are living healthier life, and we can have both the reproductive and the health longevity in women. So this is from my side. And what you can do now to avoid ovarian aging for women is eat a healthy diet, sleep well, manage stress, avoid smoking and limit alcohol, have regular checkups, and exercise regularly. So this is what you can do to improve your ovarian health and to avoid ovarian aging. So with this, I would like to thank my lab mates, all our collaborators, and all our funding sources. And I just want to say that save the ovaries, follow a good lifestyle, and lead a healthy lifestyle so you can have better years of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Biswas, for this very detailed and informative session on ovarian aging, on ovarian health. I'm sure we all will be following the suggestions. Those are given by you. We are really glad to have you with us, and we will look forward to such sessions in the future. Now, we are moving on to the last lecture of this series. We are glad to have among us Dr. Rinchu Doma Dukpa, Assistant Professor in the Department of Economics, Rampurhat College. Dr. Dukpa, we are really happy to have you among us as you are representing our college and the voice of our college over here. Dr. Dukpa was trained as an economist at the universities of Calcutta and Vishakha, and then shifted into interdisciplinary research after acquiring a master's degree in natural resource management from the University of Manitoba in Canada. Her earlier work was on food security issues in the Himalayan regions of Nepal, as well as tea garden issues, including the geographical indication status of Darjeeling tea, where she explored the GI-based tea brand security, translated its commensurate benefits to workers or not. She completed her PhD from Water Resources Management Group under Wageningen School of Social Sciences, Wageningen University in Netherlands, focusing on Hyderabad development conflict in the North District of Sikkim. Dr. Dukpa, we welcome you once again, and the stage is all yours. Thank you very much.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes, but I am unable to share my presentation. How do I do that? Alpana, would you like to share my presentation?
Yeah, I'm doing so.
What is wrong with it?
ডাউনলোড করতে হবে শেয়ার করেছে আমাকে কি মানে মিনিমাইজ করলাম দাঁড়া কিন্তু কিছু করার নেই তো ও তো আমাকে ও ওখান থেকে প্রেজেন্ট করতে পারবে না আমাকে এখান থেকে প্রেজেন্ট করতে হবে এটাই আছে আমার কাছেই আছে করার নেই এটা থেকে হবে না
Please let me know once the presentation has been shared, okay? If the audience can see the presentation.
Rinju, you can start. I'm sharing it.
Okay. So, can people see my presentation?
Not yet.
So anyway,
Now we can.
you can see, right? Okay. I will just instruct you to change the slide as and when I want it, okay? So I'm going to start with the Commission on Women, the status of women. So by this, I want you all to understand that in order to understand our present, we must also understand our history, but our history is very long. So I'm going to focus a little bit on key organizations or key events or key work that is going to give us an understanding how the world is at the present. The first slide, please move. So this is why I want to start with the Commission on the status for women. So it's an old commission. It was started even before India got independence, and you will be surprised that we had Sharifa Hamid Ali as one of the representatives representing India way back in 1947 when India got independence. So many of the rights, many of the privileges, many of the acts that we enjoy in the current 21st century has got a long history in the making. And that is why I thought that I should touch upon few events, a little bit of historical context in order to understand our present. And so that we will be able today to evaluate the progress that women has made given the historical context. All right. So, so even before we got independence, I already shared that we had Begum Hamid Ali. And in 1947, the first meeting, no, please go back.
Okay.
In 1947, the first meeting of the Commission of the Status for Women was undertaken in New York, where they spoke about protecting the rights, from protecting and promoting the rights of women in different aspects. So from 1947 onwards, the Commission of the Status for Women have had multiple meetings. Up until this year, 2026, it is going to have the 70th meeting or the 70th session. So going back, what it did was, it did many decades, 20, 30 decades of promoting and protecting the rights of women. But it suddenly realized, this commission realized that it was not enough because there was discrimination against women in different forms that was not being addressed simply by the promotion and protection of rights. So that is why in early 1960s, it started talking about, or it adopted the Declaration on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. So within that time, we also had the first World Conference, the United Nations First Conference, and the United Nations, in consultation with the Commission on the Status for Women, they've drafted the World Plan for Action, where they brought key points from all the decades of work that the Commission on the Status of Women were doing. So that is why in 1979, there was one convention. This is very important for us to understand women's progress in the current context and also the evolution of women and women's rights in India or globally. So does anyone know what CEDAW stands for, or if they've heard before? Please, let's move on to the other slides. So the CEDAW is a convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. What the Commission realized was that simply adopting a declaration was not enough in order to bring about changes to call for gender equality for women. So that is why they decided to go for a binding treaty that would work for women in order to bring gender equality across the world. So between this 1947 up until the formation of CEDAW, there were many conventions, many declarations that were done, but then they had to come together to form CEDAW. So while work towards protection and through CEDAW, they were working towards the elimination of discrimination against women. So this was one of the first comprehensive documents that defined discrimination, because when we are talking at a global scale, then there are different kinds of discrimination depending on different geographical regions or different geographical cultural traditions. So in that way, it was a comprehensive document to describe or define discrimination, and it laid down different guidelines for the member nations or participating countries to implement the CEDAW framework. And it was thing that it did was it created an implementing or monitoring committee, because up until then there were so many conferences, there were so many declarations, but it was not binding. So they developed a committee that would monitor and see if the countries adopting CEDAW would implement the CEDAW framework, and if there is any violation to the CEDAW framework. Next, please. So then what about India? Where does India stand in terms of CEDAW? Next. So as you will see that India, next please, India was also a signatory to CEDAW in 1980. It signed in 1980 and it was ratified in 1993. Now what I mean by ratification is that India was formally committed to the legal and social reforms aimed for achieving gender equality. So because India is a signatory and also a ratifier of CEDAW, we are bound to submit periodic reports to the UN CEDAW committee every 4 years for international scrutiny. So this was the power of this CEDAW framework, that the countries have to keep on collecting data, keep on reporting, keep on showing the status of women, their improvement or not improvement in every 4 years. So unlike other declarations, I said it was very binding. Now, the interesting thing about CEDAW is that after the CEDAW implementation in India, various policies, various guidelines, acts and laws were enacted in India, keeping in mind the goals and objectives of CEDAW, if you are aware of that or not. So the most famous application of CEDAW occurred in the Vishakha versus the state of Rajasthan case in 1947. I mean, one of the organizers of this conference today is the Vishakha committee of Rampurhat, and just for the students who are like listening to this. So what had happened was that in 1997, there was a case, the Banwari Devi rape case, where a social worker was raped because she had opposed child marriage in Rajasthan. So she was raped by the upper caste men, and who were arrested, but eventually they were released. So what the local people did was that the women, they came together under the banner of Vishakha, and they filed a PIL in the High Court and later to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court observed that there was a vacuum regarding workplace sexual harassment, and that is why they issued the Vishakha Committee guidelines. In keeping in mind the framework, the goals, and the principles of CEDAW. So the Vishakha committee and the Vishakha guidelines has a direct relation to CEDAW, which was ratified by India in 1993. And it was this guideline which later on went on to form a very powerful act, that is the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act in 1930. So what I want to say is that the guidelines from the 1980s that was created by decades and decades and decades of work by different organizations, different women's groups, that is being implemented by the signatory countries, of which India is one. And likewise, there are many examples of laws, acts. I have just given very few on the screen. Two remarkable worth mentioning are the 33.33% percentage of seat reservation in the Panchayat Raj institution at the rural level and in the municipalities at the local level. This was also one of the outcomes of the implementation of CEDAW in India. And in 2002, they had proposed a bill to increase the reservation of seat to 33%, which was later on again in 2023, it was accepted in the Lok Sabha. And so now we have 33% of seat for women in Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies. So likewise, India has been making its national policies and local policies in congruent with the CEDAW guidelines. Next, please. So again, coming back to the chronology, the 1979, after CEDAW, CEDAW was again a part of the First World Conference on Women, and we had multiple world conferences with multiple declarations. And I will focus on the fourth and the last International World Conference on Women in the late section. But here I just want to report that while the world and the Commission on Women and different women's organizations were coming towards building a strong framework for promoting women equality, gender equality, simultaneously there was also another key commission that had taken place in the early 1980s. And it is remarkable to see here that in the Brundtland Commission, it was a woman. She was the Prime Minister of Norway, in the three-time Prime Minister of Norway in the 1980s. It was under her leadership that the Brundtland Commission report was formed, which later on paved way for the formation and implementation of sustainable development goals that we are using today. So next slide. So the Beijing Declaration. So of the four International Women's Conference, the fourth one, which took place in 1995. So this was a very important declaration because it was almost like a progressive blueprint for a comprehensive global policy for gender equality. So the key aspect of this report is that the women who were the delegates and who were part of this declaration and who all met in Beijing, they realized that we have to take stock of things. Like, we just cannot come organize international conference and have declarations and have objectives and not have a thorough follow-up. We need to take stock of things, so we need to have a follow-up. So it identified 12 different areas, critical areas for women, and they started working from 1955 with the objective that there is going to be a high-level review after every 4 years or 5 years. So it was under, and India was party to the Beijing Declaration also. It was signatory to it. It implemented, it follows the Beijing Declaration and the Platform for Action guidelines. Although this is not a binding convention like the CEDAW, but nonetheless, so many policies, like I have mentioned only a few, like the NEP 2020, the STEM initiatives, and likewise there are many other initiatives that India has been following under the greater guidelines of the Platform for Action of Beijing 1995. So So in this, and they do this 5-year review. So last year, 2025, they had the 30th year review of Beijing. So the report is called Beijing plus 20 plus 30. You will find multiple reports which has very detailedly laid down the status of women, the progress that has made in these 12 key areas. But then in the report, there have been like remarkable progress in certain areas like education, women's health. But then at the same time, there are but a lot of sectors that has also not shown any progress. So it has a dark picture as well as a little bit brighter picture. And it has also categorically said that despite 30 years after Beijing Declaration and 70 years since the 1947, since the Commission of Women for the Status of Women, 70 years since working exclusively for women issues, no country has ever achieved gender equality. Next slide, please. So then we also have, again, coming back to the Sustainable Development Goals. So on one hand, we have a comprehensive Beijing reports that gives a certain picture of women and the progress that has been made up until now. And then we have the Sustainable Development Goals that has 17 different identified goals. And in each of these goals, it has worked to show how women have been included or not in each of the goals, how women have fared in each of the different goals. Next slide. And you will find in the Sustainable Development websites or in any of the report that for every 17 goals, there has been a very thorough study to show the progress of women in each of the goals. I am just highlighting only one aspect, the gender equality, which is the 5th goal of sustainable development. And call me a pessimist, but I have pulled out certain facts that shows that a great deal of progress needs to be made. So if you see that in terms of like political participation, globally, the seats in national parliament has increased only up to 27.2%. And that is like last year's data. And representation in local government has completely stagnated at 35.5% since 2000. And the other thing is that although there has been strides and improvement in women's education, but women occupying key positions or managerial positions that remains very relatively low. So it is at 30%. This is like last year's report. And what the UN says is that we need like 100 years. The rate at which the managerial position percentage has increased for women, we will need 100 more years to get gender parity at that rate. And the female FMG that is also at rise. And in order to eliminate it, we require 27 times faster progress to eliminate female mutilation practice that's practiced in some parts of the globe. So likewise, there are many, I have only selected certain aspects to show you the progress that women have made, despite these elaborate frameworks, elaborate conventions, and elaborate declarations that we have made. Next slide. And so now when we come to the Viksit Bharat vision of India, so women are the key pillars. It's one of out of the 4 pillars, women are one of the 4 pillars. And women, they constitute like 50% of the world's population. So unless and until, as you've already seen from the Beijing Plus 30 report and the sustainable report of last year, that we have not quite made the progress that we should have made in the last 70 years. So in that way, the development, Viksit means developed, the developed Bharat. We have 20 more years 21 years to be developed. But from the
তারপর
historical aspect, we have seen that in 70 years, we have not been able to actually get gender parity or gender equality. We have not been able to eliminate discrimination. So as an economist and also as a woman, the Viksit Bharat aimed at 2047 is like it's to be taken with a pinch of salt. I mean, in a much more pragmatic way. And again, I want to point out one thing is that the Beijing declarations, the Beijing reports, and the Sustainable Development reports, these are all based on figures, the statistical facts that the statistical data that every country has provided. Now, the problem with India is we have not had or conducted census from 2021. The last census was conducted in 2021. So we do not have the population database from which we can actually extrapolate results. We do have a sample size data from the National Sample Survey Office, but in terms of the population data, that is going to give us the actual picture of the progress made by women or not made by women up until now. That is missing. So this is one of the reasons why this year, like between the 9th and 19th March, we are going to have the 17th session of the Commission on the Status for Women. And they are going to launch a report that is it's a warning report to say that although we have had so many strides, much needs to be done. So the theme for this time, this is in addition to gender equality, the women and girls must also have access to justice. So we have new set of problems in addition to the already unsolvable problem. And with that, I would like to end. But before that, just a small anecdote. I had the pleasure of meeting somebody from Darjeeling who attended the Beijing Declaration in 1995. So she happened to meet my uncle in just a few years ago and told, because Dukpa, my surname is Dukpa, and he met Mr. Dukpa as one of the water stakeholders. And he said, "Are you Rinchu Dukpa's uncle who happens to be a resident of Rangul?" So my uncle could not contain his anger. And for 3 or 4 months, he went on berating that, how could she say that I am Rinchu Dukpa's uncle? It should have been the other way around, that Rinchu Dukpa is my niece. So there is patriarchy for you. And with that, I would like to end my talk.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. We would like to thank Rinchu, ma'am. The section was brilliant. Pillars. So women are called pillars. And as we know, a pillar is not constructed on a single day. It needs time. It takes time. So the pillars of India, the women, the pillars were built upon how the pillars were built upon. So ma'am has beautifully explained how the pillars were built upon, going by historical data, talking about acts and commissions. Thank you, ma'am. And we would like to thank all the 4 speakers who had joined us. Thank you. We would like to thank all our speakers for joining us. Now, there's an interactive session. All the 4 sessions are now open for taking up questions. Okay, so what the participants can do, they can type their questions on the chat box. All the speakers, they will take the questions from there and they will address the questions over there. Okay, so 5 minutes duration for this session. You can write your questions on the chat box. Amrita ma'am, she has left the meeting. So she will not be able to address the questions.
I think Shubhrani has some question.
What is the question?
Shubhrani, you can unmute yourself and have your question.
Okay. Is the concept of a woman a homogeneous category with the three waves of feminism often at conflict with one another? Who will address in general? Okay. So we have three speakers now with us. Any one of them can address the question. Amrita ma'am? Amrita ma'am has left. Meenakshi ma'am? Or Shubhashri ma'am? Right. I think this is a question for Meenakshi ma'am. Right? The concept of a woman, a homogeneous category with the three waves of feminism often at conflict with one another.
Actually, exactly, you are talking about, what is it? Another question, no, the previous one, isn't it? Of a women, a homogeneous category with the three waves of feminism, often at conflict with one another. What do you exactly want to ask? Could you be more specific, please, about the question?
Yes.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. I think for
it's your observation, you must be having something in your mind regarding this, right?
Yes,
Could
thank you
tell
so
me,
much,
please? Then we can
Yes,
share
ma'am.
thoughts. Right.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Actually, I was unable to type it properly, so I'll just communicate it through
Okay, please.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So when we talk about the concept of a woman, often women have identities that coalesce with one another. For example, women who belong to certain ethnic communities often have to undergo a kind of double marginalization. So a woman, suppose a woman who belongs to a minority community or a woman who belongs to a lower subaltern caste and has to subscribe to that identity has to overcome a double marginalization. Similarly, ma'am, when it comes to working women have a set of challenges that is very different from the kind of challenges that women who choose to stay at home have to experience. So, and then, ma'am, there is one of the examples of this, ma'am, is when in the United States, when the three waves of feminism were coming in, I mean, after the first wave that shook the Western world, the second and the third wave often had to deal with this problem. For example, African American women were participating to be seen or to have greater representation in the public space, while white women were participating or they were actually agitating to have the right to secede from the working place. So while African American women were working for social representation and their workers' rights, white women were looking for rights or advocating for rights over their own body. So in this sense, sometimes these identities tend to clash with one another. So how do we navigate that, ma'am? I think that's all, ma'am. Thank you.
No, the question is very well put and your observation is very correct. It will be that this kind of, how would you say, you cannot put them all together in one box. Because, as you very correctly put it, the status of women that you were talking about from different societal strata, or as you said, from the different races. So, but something is common, that is all of them feel that they are not being given due, respect or due the attention regarding their problem. But this will always remain, because though women is it is women, but women from different parts, women with different problem areas, they will have their problems addressed in a fashion that they want it to be addressed. So am I reaching what you're trying to understand? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. I understand, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Am I cut off? Not exactly. May I know your name, please? That was very nicely put. May I know your name?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Shubhranil Ghosh, ma'am. I'm actually an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science at Rampurhat College.
Right, Shubhranil. Yes. Okay. And anything else?
No, ma'am. Actually, that's and ma'am. Sometimes I feel when it comes to women's health, and again, this is a question that I encounter when women who consult a doctor or go to the hospital. Sometimes women's health and women's bodily autonomy often clash with one another. There are certain contradictions when a woman chooses to have something, or say a woman chooses to, so when a woman chooses to undergo a hysterectomy, or a woman chooses to undergo any surgical procedure, that often comes or engenders questions concerning her bodily autonomy. So how we navigate that is another dimension that I find quite complex. But thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I understand, because there are complexities, and nowadays again that point also comes when women try to change what their physical or biological organs for being something else, or the man does to become a woman. That is also there. And again, with hysterectomy or whatever, what happens is she losing out on being a woman? That is another question. So these things will be there, but I think a woman should not be treated like she is a human being. So even if a man goes through some operations or a woman goes, I think we should see it from the same kind of views, or our opinion should not be different for a woman and it should not be different for a man. As a human being, I guess, they should be treated. That's exactly what we are trying to reach through this Women's Day, that we are human.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Another question is, oh, he's already asked that. Prerogative for women's bodily autonomy and the drives for women's health.
Hello, Shubhranil.
Yes, Rinsu.
Yes, if I may just add on that homogeneity question, I think lately the concept of intersectionality has also started gaining space in literature and everyday practice that debunks the idea that women are homogeneous. And also in these major conventions and all, now they are specifying mountain women, desert women, the kind of problems that women face in different geographical areas or different communities. So in that way, intersectionality. the intersectionality that the UN has had it in understanding. There's a framework on intersectionality that has made more clear that the idea of women is nothing is not as homogeneous as has been thought of, and different women in different places, different ethnicities, they face different problems. So sometimes the argument is also moving away from gender equality to gender equity, keeping in mind the intersectionality and the differences amongst women themselves.
Yes, thank you, Rinchu. But having said that, I think when we look at the process of intersectionality, I think while sociologically speaking, we might think that intersectionality manifests in very linear ways, but often intersectionality does not manifest in very linear ways. So, for example, if let's look at let's look at the issue of domestic help. So, a lot of women have to perform duties of being owing to poverty or their socioeconomic position, work as domestic help or domestic assistance in the households of other people. Now, what exactly is the power equation between a domestic help and the women of that household? I mean, there we don't have the kind of intersectionality, or we don't have the kind of convergence of interests. There, the woman of the house and the domestic help of the house, they're both women, by the way, and both have to overcome certain challenges that comes with their womanhood. But the class position is different, the ethnic identity may be different, the caste identity may be different. So this idea of intersectionality itself is very fragmented. It does not necessarily manifest everywhere. But yeah, I I understand what you're trying to say, but thank you for your response. Thank you.
You can have your question. Shubhashree is available. Okay. You can have.
Actually, my second question was directed to Dr. Shubhashree Biswas. Ma'am, thank you for that very informative presentation. Actually, what I wanted to know was often that was the question that related to hysterectomies. So, what sometimes does the woman's control over her own body conflict with women's health in itself? So, if a woman tends to undergo a surgical procedure, will that tend to counteract her claims to control over her own body? That was my question. That sometimes health and control, or bodily autonomy, those things may not converge. But that's all I wanted to ask. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very great and a very contradictory question, I would say, because bodily autonomy actually means that women should have the right to make any informed decisions about their own bodies, right? Including, it could be reproductive choices, it could be medical treatments, and any lifestyle decisions. But when it comes to women's health initiatives, which I preach a lot, that it aims to reduce disease and improve all the maternal outcomes, well, I think when properly aligned, these two goals should strengthen one another. It shouldn't cause any tension when health goals contradict with the bodily autonomy things that you're asking for. As far as I feel, that these two goals should really strengthen one another, because women should feel good from within, right? So she should have a choice. And I feel that the policies should not restrict choices for women's own good. That's what I feel. If that was your question and I answered it.
For beautifully wrapping up the question that has been asked by Professor Shubhranil Ghosh, we thank you once again. As we approach the conclusion of this enriching seminar, it is time to express our sincere gratitude to all those who contributed to the success of this program. At the onset, I would like to thank the chief patron of this seminar, Dr. Ashish Banerjee, President of Governing Body and Deputy Speaker, the West Bengal Legislative Assembly, our patron, Dr. Prabal Kumar Sinha, Principal, Rampurhat College, the coordinator of this conference, Dr. Debojyoti Samanto, IQAC coordinator, Rampurhat College, today's teacher in charge of Rampurhat College, Dr. Ganesh Late, the organizing secretary of this conference, Dr. Mohua Das Majumdar, the conveners of this conference, Bithi Dash and Dr. Alpona Mukhuti, the TCS of Rampurhat College, Dr. Amlan Jamadar, of course, our three invited speakers, Dr. Meenakshi Chakraborty, Dr. Amrita Banerjee, Dr. Shubhasri Bishwas, and our very own Dr. Rinchu Doma Dukpa. I would like to thank the members of the advisory board for this conference, Dr. Tista Dottaroy, Dr. Chamili Chaudhary, Dr. Shudipa Nag, and Mrs. Pinky Roach, the members of the technical committee, Dr. Sudeshna Majumdar, Shati Naik, Dr. Rajashree Roy, Dr. Rinchu Doma Dukpa, Sabnam Sultana, Rajiv Murmu, Bappa Dittu Saha, Dr. Pradeep Adhikari, Dr. Priyanka Chakraborty, Dr. Tamal Sarkar, Dr. Pramesh Chetri, Professor Shubhranil Ghosh. I would also like to thank once again Dr. Sudeshna Majumdar for her mellifluous rendition with which she inaugurated today's session. I would like to thank my co-host, Professor Shati Naik, for her constant support. And I would like to thank all the participants, all the students, and all the teaching and non-teaching staff whose presence has made this conference a success. Thank you once again. Okay. So the convener of this conference, Dr. Alpona Mukhuti, would like to say 2 lines to wrap up today's conference.
Thank you so much for patiently hearing today's seminar. At the end, on behalf of Bithi Dash and myself, I would like to express my special appreciation to our wonderful anchors, Professor Shreya Chakraborty and Professor Shati Naik, for conducting today's program so beautifully. I knew that they won't be thanking themselves. It was possible, and they are very humble. Their confident presentation and clear coordination and engaging communication kept the entire seminar organized, lively, and enjoyable. Their graceful anchoring truly added charm and professionalism to today's event. Thank you so much for always being so helpful and giving us precious time. Thank you so much.
So thank you all once again to all who are present over here. And wish you all a very happy Women's Day. And please let us remember, Women's Day is not only one day, but all the days of the year. Thank you once again.
Thank you.